All right, so for my recording, I'm going to be interviewing Ms. Vasquez from the school that I'm student teaching at. She is a first year teacher. Would you like to say hi, Ms. Vasquez?
Hi.
Okay, so Ms. Vasquez did not want to be recorded, so I'm just going to be doing an audio recording. So my first question is, what has motivated you to work with English language learners?
I wanted to work with English language learners because I saw how important it was for my parents to learn English when they came to Texas. They struggled a lot when they were learning English, and I wanted to help ease the transition for students who are coming to America who did not know English, just like them.
Okay. My second question is, how long have you been working with English language learners?
Actually, this is my first year as a teacher, so it's only been a few months so far. However, when I was in my undergrad, I worked with a few English language learners while volunteering at various programs. One program I volunteered at was Breakthrough Houston, and this focuses on helping high-achieving students who lack resources prepare for the upcoming year. And I had a few students who struggled with English, and it allowed me an opportunity to actually give back in a fulfilling way.
Okay. So Breakthrough Houston sounds like a pretty interesting program. My third question is, what is the background of your English language learners?
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so what I mean is what are the different cultures that come up? What is your classroom made up of in different cultures? What are their backgrounds?
Well, right now most of my students are Hispanic, but a few of them are Vietnamese and Taiwanese and other races like that.
Okay, so you have a little bit of differentiation, but it's mostly Hispanic populations?
Yes.
Okay. My fourth question is, what has been the biggest struggle for your students as they have started to learn English that you may have seen in the classroom so far?
I can't particularly think of anything in specific overlapping struggle, but there's a few others. One of these struggles is the alphabet. They can master the sounds of the letters, but blends, diagrams, R-controlled vowels, and other rules throw the students off and kind of confuse them, and this can cause doubts with some of my students.
Okay, so they get a little frustrated whenever they can't do it?
Absolutely.
Okay. My fifth question is, what is one specific way that you have started to help your students whenever they have these struggles with diaphragms and different R-controlled vowels?
My students are in groups of 4 to 5, and so this allows them to depend on each other when they are learning, particularly English. For instance, sometimes students forget the names of foods that they don't practice naming as often, such as black olives. Mm-hmm. The students are able to ask each other in their native language how they say the name of these objects, and this helps them transfer knowledge between each other. So I also focus on giving my students a variety of ways to show me what they know through assessments. I never only give them one type of exam, like a multiple choice test. I always allow them ways to speak orally and perform what they know to better show me that they are learning and transitioning these languages.
Okay. I feel like that also takes a lot of time and effort for you to make all these different types of exams and to test them.
Yes, but I think it's a better way to actually gauge these students. They're learning from a different culture, and so it's a little bit more difficult. Particularly reading a multiple choice exam might be a little more difficult, so showing me in other ways that they're progressing is a little better for me.
Okay. And also, I guess if they're not really good at comprehension or reading, that would really mess them up if they're doing multiple choice.
Yes.
All right. My next question is, what are common misconceptions you have seen within your English language learners?
I think a big misconception students have is where to insert commas and apostrophes. They're confused on where they should go, and they don't insert them, or they insert too many into the sentences, and that really just throws things off when you're translating into English.
Mm-hmm. I remember whenever I was in school, I remember having that difficulty, and English was my only language that I've learned, so I can definitely see where that comes in.
It's a little complicated.
So I know you talked about earlier your students have misconceptions or they have different struggles. How have you motivated your English language learners?
So again, like I said, I put them in groups of about 4 to 5 so they can do activities like think, pair, share. And this allows the students to practice and rehearse what they will be saying with their peers. They become more confident in their response and in sharing their response in English. And I've also fostered a culture in my classroom where students are welcome to make mistakes in the classroom. I've created a wall of mistakes where students can showcase mistakes they've made and how they've corrected them. And this really shows them that mistakes aren't something that we should be worried about, but more so grow from.
Okay, yeah. So it's instilling that growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work with students who come from different language backgrounds? Because I know you mentioned that you do have Vietnamese students and just
Taiwanese. Yeah, so I focus on getting to know the culture that they're from and the language they speak. I also try to create a good relationship between me and their parents, and this way I can know my students better and that they know that I care. This also helps me find a way that they may commonly be struggling based on the languages that they speak. So to get more involved in their family life, how they've grown up, and things like that makes me better understand where they may be coming from, the difficulties that they struggle with.
Yeah, and I think a common misconception or like a common problem that you would notice if you knew that Spanish speakers how like their languages is that whenever they're speaking Spanish, they do noun first and then adjective, and then in English we do adjective then noun. So I can see definitely where you may want to know where they're coming from. My second to last question is, how does your body language affect your teaching?
So I rely on my body language a lot when I'm teaching. Facial features help translate meaning when we're talking. Somewhere around 50 to 70% of my language is through body and tone. I also use them when I'm speaking and teaching my students English.
Okay, and my last question is, were you yourself an English language learner? And based on that, do you think that if you were, that it helped you, or that if you're not, that it's kind of like created a gap between you and your students?
So I actually wasn't an English language learner when I was younger, but I don't think that separates me from my students. I have the experience and knowledge of what it was like for my parents, and I think that even if someone wasn't an English language learner, it should not be something that holds them back from being an excellent ESL teacher. As long as someone is invested in their job and willing to put in the time and effort to use best practices with their students, they should be great. It's not something that holds you back from being successful.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Basque. That's all I have.
Thank you.